The Rise and Shine podcast series is made possible by the generous support of Bonnie Vozar of Chicago, Illinois.
We are respectful of each other. The children see that. They see the actions. Kids rarely listen to what you say. They watch what you do. They are like God. They never blink.
Oh my gosh. I think I'm starting to understand some of the issues in my family.
This is Rise and Shine, a podcast that offers timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations to fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note. Here is Adrienne Gold Davis.
The Cambridge Dictionary defines the word conversation as follows: a talk between two or more people in which thoughts, feelings, and ideas are expressed, questions are asked and answered, or news and information is exchanged. When was the last time you really had that sort of experience? Living in the echo chambers that we do, imprisoned by our own thumbs, by the algorithms of our clicking. And we're more adept now at parallel monologues, for example, than we are at real conversation. Creating a culture for conversation is a challenge we face throughout the world, both as parents of young and adult children, and certainly in our social circles and our relationships as well. So you know that old Jewish expression, right? 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Well, in my family, there's 4 Jews and 4 completely different opinions. And often, lately, we do better when we just don't speak about anything that's potentially divisive. So I have to ask myself, have I been sacrificing real intimacy with my family to avoid dissension or conflict? Am I too afraid of discomfort to speak my truth, or am I actually keeping the mitzvah not to speak where I won't be heard? Well, thankfully, the newest Momentum publication, The Art and Practice of Living Wondrously, is released worldwide, edited by Dr. Renit Ziv Krieger, who's Momentum's Director of Education. And this work has been in progress for more than 5 years. So who could have imagined that this book would land just when so many of us are yearning for joy and for strength and deeper meaning, and when the world around us is searching for hope and healing? Living Wondrously feels more essential than ever. Now, it's an inspiring collection of original essays written by world-renowned leaders and thinkers, and they offer fresh and soul-nourishing pathways to personal growth and to spiritual connection. And the book dovetails insights from social science and from Jewish wisdom that would pertain to elevating your daily living. But this month, all my podcasts are dedicated to highlighting some of the eminent writers who are found within their pages. And have I got a gift for you today? Today, I don't have just one. No, not one. I have 3. A father and his 2 adult children who wrote collectively. So let me tell you a little bit about them. They are definitely bio-worthy. For over 50 years, Dr. Bruce Powell has dedicated his entire professional life to Jewish education. He's helped found and led 3 Jewish high schools in LA, and he's consulted on the founding of 23 schools around North America. He's the dean of the Mazar School for Jewish Education and Leadership at the American Jewish University in Los Angeles. And along with Dr. Ron Wolfson, he co-authored Raising A-Plus Human Beings, Crafting a Jewish School Culture of Academic Excellence and AP Kindness. Now, his daughter, Rebecca Powell, she's program director at Resetting the Table. She formerly served as the student activities director at Harvard Hillel and as an educator at Roundabout Theater Company, Central Synagogue, Capitol Camps, and other Jewish institutions. And also Jonathan Powell, a veteran speechwriter and a communications professional. He's based in D.C. and Washington, and he has advised and crafted remarks and op-eds and press material for some of the top figures in the executive branch on Capitol Hill and in the LA city government, as well as for CEOs and nonprofit leaders across the country. I understand why your wife isn't here and your mother, because the nachas is so overwhelming, I can barely breathe. This is a family of superstars. So welcome to Dr. Bruce and Rebecca and Jonathan. It's such an honor to have you. Wow.
Thank you very much.
How'd you like that? I mean, that's an intro. That's something, that's nachas for the ages.
And this is only half the number of children.
Oh, really? Oh, really? So, not to diminish the other children, there are nachas machines of their own right. It is an honor to have you with us. Now, I just wanted to start with this. Your essay in Living Wondrously is entitled Context is Text, Creating a Culture for Conversation. So what I would value is hearing from each of you about how this concept plays out in family life beyond the school system and beyond that. And I want to hear more about the kind of steps that you write about, that you laid out for creating a culture of conversation actually within family life. So let's begin with the Papa, Dr. Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adrian, for having us. So this idea of context creates text came to me as we were being asked the question, what makes for a fabulous conversational milieu? And I realized it's since birth, it's the framing in the family structure. All right. And that's really what we're talking about today. It's how we relate to every single person in our home. And I say that every person, not every child. All right. Because each person is created in Judaism, of course, B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. And so if you start there, if you start with that context, then how we interact and relate to these people who we brought into the world, who are independent and they are individuals. They are not. We don't own them. We own them, right? And that's an extremely important context for what we're doing. And I have to say here, I did not raise the 4 children. All right, Debbie Strauss Powell raised the 4 children. Okay, I'm just going. All right, but she taught me how to do it. So when I would tuck the kids in at night, okay, and tuck in time, it was extremely important because it's time for processing from a very, very young age. And that creates the context and the trust. Then you can have, when they get to be teenagers or middle schoolers or even elementary school kids who can actually think and cogitate different kinds of ideas, ideate and have their own thoughts, and respecting those thoughts and never talking down and regarding each person as a person. B'Tselem Elohim. This is the key to the whole thing.
I completely understand that. I understand that. And I, of course, agreed with it. How could you not? But what about those moments in family life, and usually they come later, not earlier, where another individual in your family holds a belief and an opinion that feels deeply threatening, not only to the family way, if you will, but perhaps feels so contrary to what you believe that it feels threatening to your very way of moving through the world. Did that ever happen in your house? I think I'll ask Rebecca.
Good choice.
Thank you. So I do think that, everything that my dad said about having that foundation, right, that all of our opinions are going to be respected, right, and that each of us is treated as an individual, right, how I showed up to dinner table conversations was different than how Johnny and how my sister showed up to dinner table conversations, and right, so therefore we were treated as individuals. And so having that strong foundation from a young age, I do think is important in the family system, right, whatever we're talking about. And at each stage, kids are going to have different things on their minds. But when it comes to these deep political divides that we are experiencing, those things that do feel threatening to the fabric, to the values that you feel like as a parent you imparted on your children.
Right.
I think there is a posture of curiosity that is required, right, to really try to understand how did my kid get to this different opinion. And something that is really key to the methodology of resetting the table when we're first training people, right, from day one, how do you listen? How do you engage in these conversations is a real postural shift from leading to following. And so for me, right, as a child of my parents, but now as a new parent myself, with a 2 and a 4-year-old, right, like I'm in the very, very early stages of this, but I know that my job as a parent right now, a lot of the time feels like leading, right? Like I'm leading them to school, I am leading them to, learning their letters. I'm sort of directing family life. But then it's really important, particularly with my 4-year-old, to start following, right? How does she want to play? How does she want to engage with the world? What's the stories that's coming out of her head? So that, right, as, when we're talking to teenagers or we're talking to other adults, we have to sort of start thinking, okay, I'm pretty used to, as a parent, being the leader, right? And now something is shifting. I have to start following. And that doesn't mean I'm never going to be in that other role again, but I have to follow what is important to you, right? When you're in a conversation with someone, you got to say, like, how can I notice, like, what is going on for you? Because you may find by taking that following posture and listening and trying to get to real understanding that they may have come to a different conclusion, but perhaps you can actually understand how they got there. It probably was a lot because of the values that you imparted on them. It's probably not quite as much of a shift and a complete rejection as it might appear on the surface.
Okay, I hear that. And both you, Dr. Bruce, and Rebecca, I understand what you're saying, but there has to be, fellowship as opposed to leadership. Yes, I see that. I remember doing something with one of my kids called a program called Watch, Wait, and Wonder, rather than, my way of moving through the world, which was, micromanage, hover, and try and take control of everything, was more for me than it was for him. We had a power struggle. He was only 3 years old, and it was because I couldn't follow at all. So I know that what you're saying is true, and I spent 6 months in child therapy with my kid dealing with that so we could get rid of the food struggles we were having. Jonathan, this is for you. Those are strategies in order to create thinking adults who show respect, who recognize the Selam Elohim, the essence of godliness in everyone in the house. And I love that you said not children, but everyone. Was there, or do you think, Jonathan, and I don't know what your status is in terms of being a parent, but do you think there is ever a time where a parent can dig their heels in around their leadership? Or do you think as your young people get older and older, you have to follow more than you lead? And is there ever a time when you can take the reins back?
Yeah, so I have two boys who are slightly older than my nieces. They're almost 12 and 8. And I have to say, being the father of a son who's nearing his bar mitzvah has completely changed like the whole dynamic. Thankfully, I'm married to a social worker who's an expert in child psychology, so we have a lot of resources at our disposal. But honestly, the balancing act as the kids have gotten a little bit older, especially my older one, he reads the news now. He watches movies that I used to watch when I was his age. He's like gotten very into Star Wars and different things like that now. And honestly, I've just sort of had to realize, the same way I do, by the way, when I'm working with politicians or CEOs, what makes this kid tick? What makes my little one get excited to go to school in the morning? And so that's a little bit of following, much more than I used to do. I feel like when my kids were younger. But it's also, as long as we know our values as parents, and as
Right.
I feel like, and we're going to impart those onto the children, and we know where we stand, and the kids know that, and they're very familiar with what's important to us in life, what's important to us when they go play sports, or they go to school, or they go to chess club, or whatever it is. Then we're actually going to be able to have a good balance between the leading and the following.
Okay.
As long as we understand where these kids are coming from, which is, I think, echoing what my sister and father have said, then you can strike that balance. You can strike the right chord where if there are things that the kids want to do and they want to pursue, socially, academically, emotionally, whatever it is, then we can let them do that, knowing that they have the right foundation, they have the right values. And if they're going off track too much, they trust us enough that we can sort of reel them back in.
Okay, that is a powerful answer. It seems to me that what you're talking about, what you've written about, is a scaffolding, a kind of a net that allows them the freedom to move, sort of maybe even fall off the high wire a few times, and that you're not that you've created the values are a safety net. But, people can share the same values and come up with very, very different conclusions about what is necessary in the moment. And that, I think, is what I was talking about. You can have this kind of shared values, and one person can say, well, according to my values, as a Jew, I believe, yeah, yeah, yeah. And it can be completely diametrically opposed to what you say I raised them to believe in. And I think this is where the importance of being able to say to your kid, wow, you grew up in this house, and I raised you a certain way. And the fact that you are such a free thinker and that you've come to different conclusions than I have shows, your strength and your independence, as opposed to be able to say that. But Bruce, there was a series of steps you wrote about. And I think that we need those steps. And I'd like to share them with our audience of mothers at the moment, because I don't think you can let them walk on the high wire unless that net is there. So can you give me a little bit about the steps?
Yeah. First of all, in terms of leading and following,
Yeah.
there was never any discussion about safety. I would lead every step of the way. Whether it's sitting as the lifeguard at a pool, I never took my eyes off my kids. It's crossing the street. I hold their hands, and that was not the not holding your hand was not an option until around 10 years old, and then it was okay.
Right.
Now I ask them to hold my hand because of my advanced age, and so I won't fall over. A couple of things. Also, there's the Jewish concept of tzimtzum, right? The tzimtzum means to contract. So when do we contract? When do we get out of the way? And when do we expand and get in the way? Again, safety. I fill every space. All right.
Okay.
For young children. Unfortunately, I'm still doing that for my wife. When she gets in the cars, I do drive carefully because I'm very strict about safety, especially in Los Angeles.
Sure. Yeah.
But more to the point. All right. So I sat down. I don't know how Rebecca. How many years ago was it when we had the sushi and we talked about parenting? How old were you?
I think I was 14.
14. So that was we'll just say 20 years ago. And Rebecca, I said to her, what did Mom and I do? And she said, well, you were parents, actions, values, expectations, and supper. And all of a sudden we had an acronym, PAVES. How did we pave the way? So I started to, I wrote that up in chapter 5, actually, in the Raising A+ Human Beings. Parental Actions, Values, Expectations, and Supper, PAVES. First, be a parent. You're not a friend. All right. That's just nonsense. All right. And right now, my children are friends. All right. And not only they're friends, but they're colleagues. All right. Which is why we wrote this thing together. But when they were younger, we acted as parents. And parental actions, meaning we don't curse, we don't smoke, we don't drink, we don't drive fast. All right. We model. All right. We are respectful. Debbie and I are respectful of each other. The children see that. They see the actions. Kids rarely listen to what you say. They watch what you do. They are like God. They never blink.
Oh my gosh. I think I'm starting to understand some of the issues in my family. Okay, go on. Yeah.
And never blink. Then there's the values piece. All right. We often ask our children when they come home from school, how was math? How was your math test? How was your English test? How was your Hebrew test? What we ask as parents is what we value. What happens if they come home and we ask them, did you do a mitzvah today? Did you ask a good question today?
Then
we're valuing mitzvot. We're valuing good questions. We're valuing thought. So what we ask our children is what we value, and then that's what they will value. You can't just sit there and start talking to them about values. All right, then we sit down when it comes to giving tzedakah, giving charity to different causes. I would collect all the envelopes I would get all year long. And on Christmas Day, we would sit down. I put out the envelopes. I said, you have $1,000, pick your causes and give $1,000 away to whichever causes you want.
Now, why did you choose Christmas Day?
Because we had nothing to do that day. Everything was closed.
So better than Chinese food in a movie. You're right.
And then expectations. And this is really an important one. What do we expect from the kids? We don't expect them to get straight A's. They all did, but we don't expect that. All right. Right. What we expect them is to work as hard as they can. And we expect them to strive to be who they are. All right. We expect them to start finding their gifts. And then we help them nurture those gifts that they begin to find and understand. We help them to individuate. So those are our expectations. We also expect them to help us set the table, put the Kiddush cups out, and we also expect them, both in public and in private, to behave a certain way. All right, because there is that notion of shame. All right, there's my grandmother used to say, "You shouldn't be a shanda." Right. A shame for the world around you. Right? The children sort of pick that up, right? But they pick that up from our actions and behaviors as parents. But probably the most important thing, honestly, of all of these parental actions, values, expectations, is supper. What do I mean by that? That's metaphor for time together. There's no such thing as quality time. That is a complete lie. There's quantity time, out of which you get some quality.
Wow.
So that having a set time together, all right, where we had dinner together every single night, even if I came home at 7:00, and when the kids were younger, they would wait. They get a snack, but they would wait for dinner for me to come home. Right. I worked far away in those days, and the drive and the traffic in LA, you can never trust it. Everybody waited for supper. Needless to say, Friday night, we were all together every Friday night. And Rebecca didn't get the advantage of this because she was too young. But, in 1990, the five of us took a car trip across the United States for 6 weeks.
Wow.
In a Dodge minivan.
Ooh,
Debbie set it up as a one-house classroom. And there was a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old. Johnny was the 7-year-old. And we had quantity time 24/7 for 6 weeks. And out of that, we got some really good quality time. I personally loved it all the time because I love history and so on and so on. And Johnny is a history buff, of course. And I keep offering to Rebecca to take her on that trip. But by the time she was old enough to go on the trip, she kept refusing. So anyway, here we are. But the supper means time, tuck-in time. Sitting on the side of the bed, reading to your kids, tucking them in, letting them talk about their day, anything that's on their mind, and don't ask questions, silly questions like, how was school today?
Oh, yeah.
Or what did you learn today? Nothing. You have to ask very, very specific questions. Debbie is an expert at that, way better than I am. So that's the context that we created.
I love it. I'm actually curious, Rebecca, and I'm going to ask both you and Jonathan to weigh in on this. This model, I mean, I think we can all agree, as painful as it is, that you can do everything right, and sometimes things can go terribly wrong. And do everything wrong, and sometimes extraordinary people come out of it. But given that we are all obligated, obviously, like the Mishnah says, it's not up to us to complete the task, but we're not free to refrain from beginning it. Given this scaffolding, and this PAVE and these ideas, Rebecca, why didn't you want to go on the trip with them? And did you ever push back about anything else? And things when you weren't living up to Were there ever times that anyone in your household pushed back in a way that was inappropriate? And how was that handled?
Sure. So, look, the trip was just I was born a lot later than my siblings, so by the time that would have made sense for me, they were off in college and
I was really kidding. I was really
I
kidding.
know, but
She wasn't born.
I wasn't born. But anyway, here's
Look,
look, of course, we've had disagreements. And I think in particular, and what I'm sure is quite frankly on a lot of your listeners' minds, is that when I went to college, I went to UC Berkeley, and, I started developing different opinions, right? Different opinions that oftentimes were in contrast with what my parents thought. And I think like the biggest thing that's happening right now that I see, personally with friends, but also in my professional life is like real differences over Israel, right? Like, and that is in some ways maps onto general like generational differences, right? Because we've grown up in very different contexts, right? When it comes to that conversation. But those differences over Israel or really any other political issue that's, kind of front and center for all of us right now, it can be very painful. And we've had many, many discussions as a family, and we have different opinions. And so something else that I've outlined in the book is a little bit of a roadmap for how to approach those particular conversations. And, I experienced a lot of conversations, particularly with my dad here, where we've gotten into it. And now, with my trading from Resetting the Table, I'm able to bring some of those approaches to those conversations. And so like just to map it out for you here, right? It's like when you are the parent of the situation, right? Or you're the facilitator, you're whoever you are, even if you're the kid, you're like, I'm gonna lead this, right? But like first to invite your interlocutor, to invite the person you're talking to, invite your team to share their opinion. And you have to really, really work hard to pause your own reaction. Right, to like really try to say like I'm gonna get to react, but I'm going to wait, right? And that's the shifting from the leading to the following posture, right? You're gonna try to ask questions like, I noticed you said this, right? You used this word, you named this value, you said comes from here. What is going on for you? Draw it out, like actually spend time, slow down, right? Try to get to the heart of what's going on, because once you do, you can say to the person you're talking to, say to your kid, look, I want to make sure I'm understanding you. For you, like, this is what's important. This is what you're trying to tell me. And you're going to do that. And you're going to confirm, did I get that right? And you're going to do it over and over and over again until they're like, yes, exactly. That's me. Right? You're going to show them that you have understood them as they wish to be understood. And you're going to like basically show them like, I have your argument. And I have it, like, whether or not I agree with it, I get it. I get it at the core. I'm not just saying, yay, I understand. I'm not just nodding and smiling. I'm actually taking the time to prove to you, I got it. I got you.
This is the Hillel approach, obviously, the Hillel and Shammai approach.
That's right. That's right. It's saying, I'm going to make your argument for you before I make mine. And it is exactly like what we've learned from Beit Hillel. And right. And so to say, okay, now that I've heard you, I see this really differently. Can I share my thoughts? And from there, the person who you're talking to, your team, is like, okay, right, I have nothing else to say. Because you've spent so much time with me that now I actually have the space to stop preparing what I'm going to say next, to stop like scowling, just to be like, okay, you gave me that time. I have a little more ability to give you that time back.
Wow.
We've done this. I do this sometimes. Obviously, it's harder with your own family. I make a joke sometimes, a very loving joke, that like sometimes with my dad, I realize we're in a circle of conversations, right? We're saying the same things to each other over and over and over again. And I realize, oh, wait, I'm a professional. I actually have a skill for this. And then I'm like, okay, Dad, let me see if I get it. For you, is this what's going on? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I got it. And usually when we go towards those differences, we're actually able to get to a much more robust sense of commonality, right? Because we're able to say, we disagree about this thing. That's not so scary. Let's actually realize, like, we have all these other agreements. And I'll say that in our family, you have to have the baseline of we love each other and our relationship is more important than this one conversation. And so we can have the conversation well in a way that actually strengthens our relationship. So let's do that instead, because we're not going to let this tear us apart. There's so much foundation that like we would never let that happen.
Oh, that was gorgeous. Jonathan? And by the way, you guys are Powell, so clearly you have the language skills, not just the scaffolding from being loved and made to feel like valued and seen and led and followed and all of those things. You also can articulate an idea. Not everyone can. Not everyone has the verbal agility that's required to take on a defiant teenager. Jonathan, what is your position on what your sister just said?
I really can't say any better than what my sister just said. On a personal level, on a professional level, she does this perfectly. So I've precious little to add on that front. But what I can say is I come from the world of politics. Like I spent most of the last, let's call it 25 years, because I started this when I was in high school, doing political campaigns, political work, for the most part, public service. And a lot of times the skills that we're talking about right now, they'd be super useful, on cable news, or they'd be super useful in a political conversation. By the way, including behind closed doors, where the conversations are much quieter, they're much more mature, they're much more sophisticated. But we need people to sit down and listen and say, wait a minute, we could actually get something done here. We can actually make some progress here, whether it's legislation or just a campaign or really anything else. If we simply listen to each other and found, is there an area where we agree, even though on those other broader things, maybe we disagree, or some other things we disagree. And so like taking these skills as parents into the professional world and into my professional world, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And that comes around to like some of the values that we always talk about, in terms of empathy, in terms of putting yourself in someone else's shoes, in terms of, as you're saying with Hillel and Shammai debate, like understand the other person's argument, being able to make it so you fully understand it before you make your own. Like all those things apply as parents, in politics, in education, no matter where you are. And it's one of those things that I sort of wish we all did more of, in our day-to-day lives, within our families, but with our friends, with people we've never met before. And to some extent, what it comes back to, I think it comes back to something my dad said at the beginning and Rebecca was talking about, is if you see other people as humans, as fellow human beings, then maybe you'll respect them a little bit more because you're a human too. And there's like that common link, right? Is that there's a great JFK quote. He was talking about nuclear weapons and peace, about how we all share the earth and we all breathe the same air. I'm just paraphrasing, but like if we all could do that in a political context and in our internal home context, then I think everything would be a little bit better. Broadly speaking. And if we ask the right questions, if we see each other in that way, and we can have the Martin Buber I thou moments with each other as people and have those connections, then I think we all might be better off, like I said.
Amen from your mouth right straight up. And, before everybody go, by the way, everybody, you can order The Art and Practice of Living Wondrously, this book that contains this rich chapter from the Powells. Okay, since you're the OG here, Dr. Bruce Powell, final words go to you. What message would you like to give our listeners regarding effective conversation and context becoming text?
So what adults value is what we spend our time on and what we spend our money on. And if you look at the checkbook, a check register, we used to have those things. You write them in paper.
I still use them.
They were not a computer. You'll see that Debbie and Bruce Powell, aside from food, clothing, and shelter, we spent all of our money on Jewish day school education and weddings. That is context. The kids maybe didn't intellectually understand what we were doing, but they do now. That we didn't value house. It took us 38 years to pay off a 30-year mortgage. We didn't believe in house. We believed in Jewish education. We believed in college education as well. All right. So they were able to go to school at least for the first 4 years debt-free.
Wow.
Because that's what we valued. It's what we spend our time on and what we spend our money on. Right. And the kids saw that, and that context created that whole context for raising the kids. And the last thing I want to say, well, two last things. One is when I went to hire faculty at De Toledo High School, I had 4 questions. Did they know their subject? Could they teach their subject? Did they have a sense of humor? And did they think teenagers were funny? Because if you don't think teenagers are funny and you don't have a sense of humor, all the rest of it means nothing. So you have to be ready to smile. You have to be ready to laugh. You can't take yourself seriously. You got to take what you're doing seriously. And again, it's when Rebecca and I have a discussion, my number 2 daughter is not on this call, Naomi. She and I used to fight like cats and dogs, but it was always with a smile. It was always with fun. It was always, and by the way, that's 6 weeks in the car. She and I would argue about everything. Today she's a vice president of the Jewish Community Foundation in Los Angeles. So she's now giving millions of dollars away. So you want to know her. Anyway, but that sense of humor. And then finally, of course, and I think Rebecca said it, basically it's a foundation of love. It's unconditional. My colleague Ron Wolfson would say, love them up. Love them up. And I'm going to end with that.
Well, I'm loving you up through the screen. This was an extraordinary 40 minutes for me. You are a living example of what is possible. And even though I have adult children, I promise you that this is going into my repertoire, because I believe when it comes to love, it's never too late to add respect and fellowship into your leadership. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And to the rest of you listening, go and get The Art and Practice of Living Wondrously. Go directly to their chapter. You can read mine too, but I mean, how do I hold myself up against this? I appreciate you. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Rise and Shine. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Momentum Podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join Adrienne again next time for more timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations that fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note.
This podcast was made possible by the generous support of Bonnie Vozar of Chicago, Illinois. Spread the wisdom. Inspire Jewish individuals around the globe by supporting Momentum's podcasts. To sponsor, contact podcast@momentumunlimited.org. You're listening to a Momentum podcast. For unlimited inspiration, wisdom, and empowerment, visit momentumunlimited.org.